Most real core marketing is just lots and lots of experimentation.
Yep.
Assuming you know nothing about the consumer, you don't know what's going to work. So let's try a lot of different ideas.
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. With me on the show is Mark Douglas with Mountain. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's a creative. He's done lots of interesting things, and we're going to talk about Mountain and how that technology now is using the power of AI and simplicity to make it easy to buy ads, specifically on smart TVs and smart channels like Hulu and others. So it's an honor to have him on the show. Mark, how you doing, brother?
Good. Thanks for inviting me. I'm pretty happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. So it's your company is very interesting. And before we dive down the rabbit hole of talking about what you do in your company, which we certainly want to do that, I always like to have a conversation with founders and really learn about their journey, learn about their struggles, and just learn about their learnings, essentially. So I see you used to work, if I saw, for eHarmony. Is that right? Was that one of your
I was head of engineering at eHarmony during their heyday, pre-Tinder, pre-Bumble. And it was like Match.com and eHarmony and essentially inventing online dating.
Yeah, we're going to age ourselves here. I remember eHarmony, so.
Yeah, I know. I mean, people did not embrace it. It was like they felt like dating failures if they had to go on an online dating site at the time. But
what did you learn from that? I'm curious. That's a great, really entry point, right? It's because the concept obviously was the right concept. It still is around. It's probably booming in some ways. What lesson did that experience of eHarmony, like how did that help inform your experience now of leading a tech company versus being an executive at eHarmony?
You know, the biggest lesson I learned was how subtle changes in your focus and your message can really resonate, because eHarmony initially wasn't doing that well. People just were not. The eHarmony was all about long-term relationships and matching you with that perfect someone. And it just wasn't really resonating in the context of the word dating. And the company actually got pretty close to running out of money and shutting down. And then very close to the end, the company's out of money. The founder, Neil Clark Warren, he went on a radio show, kind of like a podcast. And instead of talking about dating, he talked about marriage. And the same, eHarmony does the same thing, but it's just all about creating successful marriages lead to generations of healthy people. And that literally the next day, the site went from 50 people signing up a day to thousands. And
wow.
The product did not change. And just what the company was about, explaining it ironically in a more pure sense, because he was a clinical psychologist and marriage counselor. And so he just wanted to use the internet to help create successful relationships. And that it just exploded from there. And how many, you don't have to be a company that's close to running out of money, just you launch the product, and it's relatively subtle changes can have a very, very big impact on the ultimate outcome. And that was the single biggest lesson I learned. And throughout my time there, we had more things like that in the product and other things where it was just small navigational changes. It can apply to your life, can wind up having very, very big changes in the outcome. So that was the biggest learning from that.
Small changes make big differences.
Right.
And that's a great point. And it sounds like it almost happened by accident, but now that you're able to kind of reverse engineer, what lessons would you have for a founder like myself, like others that may be listening to this, about how to figure out where are those right small differences of, it could be messaging or other points to focus on, so you don't have to almost run out of money?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because on the one hand, there's that cliche, listen to your customers, but customers don't take you to the future, right? They don't. There's kind of an adage, like if you ask, if back in the days of like VHS tapes and Betamax and all that, if you ask the customer what improvements they wanted, they would say faster rewind. They wouldn't go a DVD player, so there's no tape.
Exactly.
Like they just won't tell you that, right? And so you have to like kind of come up with the innovation yourself, but then that product market fit, that like what is like, why are people going to want this? Why are they going to, what's going to resonate with them? You really do have to like assume, not like go into and be like, I'm going to assume I don't know anything about that and just listen to the customer, but do it quickly, like that fail fast mentality, like just like no one really, there's no like single path to success, and no one really like nails everything the first time along the way. So it's like fail fast, be totally on board for change, but still somehow stick to the core vision. That's kind of the key. And it's almost like a quality in you as an individual. As it in some ways you can learn it when you see people do it, but in some ways you just have to like have the right qualities to be like, nope, that's not working. We're gonna try this. I've had that experience. A company I did called Homey, which was in the apartment rental space. We launched in like the biggest apartment rental market in the country, which was Houston, Texas. But it turned out like individual landlords were the best fit for us. And so everything we did to launch the product wound up being like, nope, that was the wrong path. We got switched over here.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube started off as a dating website. A lot of people don't know that, right?
Yeah.
And this is encouraging for me as being, if you don't know, I have podcasting, but I'm also the founder of Disrupt Art. We're an NFT marketplace focused on fashion, film, and music. And I'm learning about those subtleties you talk about that make a huge difference.
Yeah.
And as you said earlier, it's not like you can't say, let's see what people want. Because as Henry Ford said, had I asked what people wanted, they would have said a faster horse.
Right. Exactly.
So you got to have, but I love the part of saying, okay, yes, what customers are currently doing can't be how you only focus on things, but the customer experience does have to be a big focus of what you currently have. I think that's very well stated. And so, all right, so you got there, you were at eHarmony, you've pivoted around, you've learned, and now, of course, you've launched this current business, Mountain, that is very, very fascinating. So first of all, I understand that you've actually acquired Ryan Reynolds' company, Maximum Effort.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about that a little bit. But let me ask this question. While you don't focus on the customer, you do focus on the problem you're solving. With Mountain, what problem do you feel like Mountain is solving for the current environment?
Well, in some way, the problem we're solving is to basically, in some ways, just democratize the television advertising market.
Okay.
So if you back up just a little and you look at television viewing, Netflix and to some extent Hulu also, they just completely led the way in changing that relationship between the consumer and the content and making it on demand. Netflix, you see all the shows going further, and you can see an entire season of shows, on the same day if you want to binge watch it. Netflix essentially invented binge watching.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, and so that and consumers responded, and then the industry followed. Right, now it seems normal that every TV network has essentially all of the content available on demand. But 3 years ago, even that wasn't the case. I mean, it was still like that wasn't the way it was. So then we looked at it and said, okay, the whole television viewing experience has been transformed, but now I still got to do an upfront. I still have to, all the advertising that essentially funds most of this content is still stuck in a 50, maybe even 70-year-old business model. So we said, everything that people consider normal about television advertising, high cost of creative, basically long lead times on planning, the high minimums, upfronts, all of that is really not that normal. No one would go into that as a customer and say, yeah, that's what I want. I want, And so we're like, well, let's just reinvent all that too. And we did. But then what the interesting thing, this is another entrepreneurial lesson, is when you attempt to reinvent an existing market, the people currently operating in a market are usually the slowest to embrace those changes.
Oh, yes and yes.
Right. And so our goal was, well, let's bring a whole new set of customers into the television advertising market, mid-sized companies or large companies that are more like the direct response advertisers that Google and Meta thrive on. And let's bring television to them. They haven't been, your average e-commerce site just never advertised on TV. As a matter of fact, just tech companies, if you look at any tech company in general, you don't see a ton of television advertising.
No, because they're going to advertise on Google, Facebook, targeted ads using.
Right. They want data. They want
absolutely
they want targeted advertising. They want lots of data to inform the amount of money they're spending. And so we set out. So we said, look, we can reinvent all this, we can modernize it, but we're going to have to find a new customer. And it wasn't as thought out as it is now. And I explain now, like, I had this all mapped out.
Yeah. Look, I get it.
Yeah. It did go pretty well. I will say that. It wasn't a lot of changes, but you kind of stumble along a bit.
Right.
And we went to those customers and they were fully on board. The idea is like, I'm doing a ton on paid search. I spent a ton on paid social. Now, potentially I can use television and have, audience first targeting, basically like digital targeting, but now on television. It resonated really well. And that became performance television. And so we essentially created the market for performance TV. I said something to my team, this is another entrepreneurial lesson. The easiest way to win a market is to create that market.
Oh, that's a mic drop. The easiest way to create a market, to
win a market is to create that market. I mean, it's also a classic
strategy. The easiest way to win a market is to create that market.
It. That's what Elon Musk did with electric cars. He essentially created the market for electric cars, and then like you're inherently the market leader. Like you're now dominating the market you created, and that's what we did with performance TV.
If I can ask a question about that, because it's yes, that's great. How does one go about doing that? So I'm looking at it from this point of view. It's like, all right, yes, you're absolutely right. You the traditional people that are doing this are the slowest to change because they have big boards, they have to do studies, they take 2 years to make a decision. And they wait for everyone else to go that way because they're large institutions with lots of runway and lots of time and lots of bureaucracy. They can do those things. It was the right pivot that sounds like that you made, was going to institutions that are more mid-sized, smaller, innovative, growing. Those who use Facebook ads, Instagram ads. It sounds like
exactly.
Google ads, things like that. But how do you convince that group still that may be your target market, that they need something that they don't know that they actually need either? How does one go about doing that? You can speak from your practical experiences, just kind of give some general advice, because I think it'd be very helpful.
Yeah. So the nice thing for us is that segment of market, what's called direct response marketing, are very data driven. And so because they're so data driven, they tend to be very open to new ideas. And they're like, yeah, I'll try it, but we'll just look at the data and see what it looks like. So you still have to find the early adopters there, the ones that, but we just happened to be fortunate that we were going into market with the marketers, or our customer, which are the marketers, were very open to trying new things. And so the existing kind of brand advertising market, they were not open to trying new things. But in the direct response market, they were very open to trying new things. They also felt very dependent on Google and at the time, Facebook. I never know if I should call Meta or Facebook.
Oh yeah, I mean, I know they want to rebrand. No one knows as Meta. I think they're hoping that people will forget that they were Facebook at one point. So but we're seasoned enough where we remember them as Facebook.
Facebook, yeah. And so you had this set of customers that were very beholden to Google and Facebook at the same time, which made them very eager to find alternatives or, additional avenues to find new consumers. And at the same time, they were super data driven. So there's very little emotion involved in the decision process. It was just like, yeah, I have a test budget. Let's try it. Let's see what the data shows. And now, we're continue to expand beyond what you can think of as that early group of customers. And that group is fairly large. So yeah, we didn't struggle to find people. It was just all about giving the biggest obstacle we had in our sales process when we launched that is just getting people to believe it. Like we literally have people on the phone going, wait, what? You can now, I don't have to call an agency. To me, it was like E-Trade in the mid 90s, like when the internet was just taking off. So what? I don't have to call a stockbroker if I want to just democratizing investing essentially. And it was a very similar thing that.
Yep. I'm a Web3 person. It's about democratizing the creative, and a lot of creatives don't believe it. Like what? Like, huh? People are going to pay me just to have access to digital images and digital ownership. Like, it is. Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah. So we followed that path, and it worked really well. The company has grown pretty nicely.
No, that's great to hear. And I think I'd like to explore something with it. I'm curious to see how it works now, because as we look towards marketing, I'm interested to figure that out. How do you help people determine do you actually help them? It sounds like you help determine their customers and everything else like that. How do you go about stepping through that process in terms of just basic just high level? If you're helping people, I guess, target the right customers and then using your technology to do that, like what would be like a really high level basic walkthrough of that?
Well, so one, our customers again tend to be marketers doing
so they know it already. They know their customers.
So they have knowledge, and it's bringing those kinds of tools where they can figure out who their audience is. So we're a software solution. We're not their agency. We if they have an agency, most of our customers don't, but if they have an agency, we'll partner with that agency. But it's bringing those same kind of digital tools to television in this self-serve platform where they can be comfortable experimenting, trying different audiences they want to reach, trying different creative, and having all this data available to measure how that's going. That's what we're doing for them. Then we partner. We have a customer success team that gives them a lot of advice, and we'll partner with any agencies that they might be working with also. But those kind of marketers are not. Everyone thinks of marketing, they tend to think of like Mad Men, where you come up with this incredible idea. But most real core marketing is just lots and lots of experimentation.
Yep.
Assuming you know nothing about the consumer, you don't know what's going to work. So let's try a lot of different ideas. And again, it's that fail fast mentality. That didn't work. Let's try this. Oh, that's working pretty well. Let's see if we can get it even better. That's kind of the cycle that most marketers really spend their days doing.
No, that's well stated.
Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit to talk about Ryan Reynolds. I mean, I can't have an interview and talk about how your company, as I understand it, Mountain actually bought Maximum Effort, which is a company of Ryan Reynolds. And my understanding is Ryan Reynolds has it was a creative, almost like they made creative content, and you bought them. Walk me through what that was like, that process in general. What's it like to work with? To actually work with Ryan. Yeah. Is he as funny as he seems on TV? So he seems funny. So
I was asked this question a few months ago, literally that question, what's it like to work with Ryan? And I said, well, the first month you try not to laugh at everything he says, because then you just seem like a giggling schoolgirl, a schoolboy, I guess. And so he is the Ryan you see on screen is Ryan. I mean, he's just a very genuine guy. He is very quick-witted. That's a superpower. I wish I was as quick-witted as he is. Just whatever you say, he knows what to say next. He's also just a really nice person. How this came about is, I think, for Ryan creating Maximum Effort, that came out of Deadpool, because the movie studio, when he made Deadpool, they gave him virtually no marketing budget. So he created his own agency to market the film, and to do it at very, very low cost. And I think Deadpool went on to make more than $1 billion at the box office. So it was, if I'm getting those numbers right. So, and then he told me, he said when we first met, we met last April, he said, it took me 8 years to make Deadpool, but I can make a commercial in a weekend and more people see it. And more people wind up seeing it, might go viral, if and so he's like, I'd rather do lots of those. I've done, he said when he says it's him, more than 50 movies. Like, I could create 50 commercials this year, and just make people laugh and entertain, but at the same time connect them with products and services that hopefully they would like. So that's how it came about. We met because we were someone recommended that we connect, and luckily some people we both knew, kind of connected us. And I showed him what we were doing. I gave him a product demo. I said, we're reinventing television advertising and democratizing, just making it so anyone can approach this. And he immediately was like, wow, I want to be a part of this. And it literally only took a few days. I think it took 2 days to go from first, hi to let's team up. And
wow.
Yeah. So legally, Mountain did acquire the agency Maximum Effort, but obviously it's Ryan Reynolds. It's a partnership,
right?
And he's a smart guy. He works incredibly hard. It's actually hard to keep up with how hard he works. It's I thought I worked a lot of hours until I saw his work schedule. Yeah. It's insane. So he's incredible work ethic, very smart, ready to do whatever it takes to win. Nothing is off limits. But at the same time, he's obviously one of the biggest celebrities in the world. So, and that does offer a lot of advantages. The biggest advantage is he never has to show his ID. I'm always like, it must be nice that your face is your ID when you walk in. We walk in a building in Manhattan. Yeah. It's like, he doesn't have to show his ID. They just say, we know who you are. You can head upstairs. I'm like, what? Come on, that's not fair. They look at me suspiciously.
That's hilarious. I'm curious, since you're combining with a brilliant creative like Ryan Reynolds, and we have this new creative economy, and it's what we focus on. We do a lot in Web3. Thoughts about the intersection between Web3, blockchain, which maybe what's happening with data and entertainment there, and then what's happening with what you're doing with data in the direct TV. What do you see as the future there? Or have you thought about the intersection between kind of the next evolution of the internet and where you currently are now?
Well, definitely in terms of things like metaverse and those kinds of aspects, and being very receptive to where that goes. And I think every new medium creates new forms of content, and generally a lot of content is funded by advertising, by companies wanting to connect with that consumer, and it tends to reinvent the formats for that advertising also. Even avenues like what Netflix is doing right now to enter the television market, I've said to them, your ads don't have to be 30-second TV ads.
Exactly.
You have no legacy. They can be something entirely Snapchat.
They could be immersive ads.
Right. Snapchat and Instagram, they don't have the same ad formats. They're very, very different. And
the fact that I'm wearing my UC brand and this is an advertisement, period. It doesn't, the advertisement itself doesn't have to be blah, blah, blah. That when people actually, we culture is showing this with hip hop, right? Yeah. Things become famous. Someone says a line in a hip hop ad and it has a beverage with them. All of a sudden that beverage sells everywhere because.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So you're making the point.
Yeah, because that's a good point. Ultimately, the idea that consumers are marketed to, that to me ended with the internet. Like if you buy a product you don't like, you are lazy as a consumer, because it's so easy to check reviews. It's so easy to see what other people think. So it's not about marketing to you. It's just about, like, there's a lot of innovation in the world and a lot of emerging companies trying to, connect with consumers, or bigger companies trying to connect with consumers. It's just about, like, here's what we have. And if this interests you, like, reach out, go to our website, go to our Instagram. And that's what marketing has really become. And going back to Ryan, I mean, a lot of the things he does from the ads he's created, there's like this like sincerity. Like, I'm just showing you what, like, he's just introducing you to something. He's not marketing to you. And that sincerity and that, like, transparency, I think resonates with consumers. Whenever he posts something, whether it's an ad he did for Mountain or ads he's done with one of our customers, the comments always say, I don't understand why I enjoy Ryan Reynolds like having me watch his ads so much. And it's like, yeah, because because he's not marketing to you.
He's just being himself.
It's just being himself. And that's going back to why we acquired Maximum Effort, and swing back to like Web3 and stuff like that. It was so many of our customers were new to TV advertising, and Maximum Effort, like, kind of shows that, like, you don't need $500,000 to get a TV ad. Like, you can it can be something that was literally created over a weekend, because Maximum Effort has done that multiple times. So, and just giving a vehicle for emerging brands, larger brands, to be able to do fast advertising on this new fast self-serve medium. Right. On the Web3, I think there's definitely going to be, it's hard to predict the future. But one thing that's easy to predict, wherever consumers go, brands, companies will follow. The consumers are more in control than they realize. That brands are following they're following your journey. You're not following their journey. That 30, 40 years ago, maybe you were following their journey because you were getting marketed to, but now
you had no choice. You didn't have choice.
You had no choice. Right?
It was like
4 channels on TV. Yeah, but now they're just following you wherever you go, and take advantage of it. I think consumers right now, I know we're jumping around topics. No, they're making themselves way too hard to find.
Well, that was my next question, though. We have more information than we've ever had, and some would argue maybe we're less informed than we've been. Yeah, and there's this kind of opposite side of what we just said. Certainly, it's better to have more choice. Also, the research says when people have too much choice, they don't know what choice to make, right? Sure. So how do we operate that? Then I got a couple of rapid fire questions I want to get to you.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the one part of that, when you have too many choices, since the pandemic, I kind of live everywhere because I can't decide where I want to live because we no longer go in an office. So I'm actually in Newport, Rhode Island right now, of all places.
Okay.
Enjoying Newport in the summer. No chance I was going to be here 2 years ago, because I'm like, I can't decide where to go. So I'm going to go someplace I'd never been. But the consumer is going back to the consumer journey. And I think for consumers, what they don't realize is one of the dominant costs of every product you buy is the cost to find you as a consumer. This is why once you buy from a company, they're like 25% off emails, because they no longer have to pay the market. They don't have to pay all this cost to connect with you anymore. So you as a consumer, if I make yourself easy to find, you will literally save money. Like, I'll give a really concrete example. If you pay $800, let's say you go online.
That is fascinating thought.
Yeah. If you go online to buy a mattress, and let's say a mattress costs $800 or $600, at least 40% of the cost of that mattress was finding out that you were moving. If you just literally said, "Hey, I'm moving," made yourself easier to identify, those companies would gladly give you 25% off. But they, once they expended all these dollars, to connect with you, like, that money is sunk costs, and you have to, unfortunately, we as consumers pay it. This idea, I'm being a little esoteric now. The idea that companies pay anything, companies pay nothing. Consumers pay everything.
That's how it works.
There's nothing a company pays for. Consumers pay everything. The company just turns what the consumer paid into, I got to buy marketing, I got to buy production, I got to buy HR, the stuff like that. So I think consumers are, when I say easy to find, I think a lot of the privacy debates right now are a little irrational, and they're just raising the cost of the products that everyone buys. So we could do a whole topic.
I mean, that's a fascinating point of view that you make, and it's when people talk about Web3, part of I think the narrative is like everybody's going to own their own data, which is what the powerful part of it to some folks. The powerful part I see is that creatives and people that are making content can have another way to monetize and kind of co-create with their fans. But data still is data. Like, it's blockchain is a ledger. People can follow data. We can figure that part out too. Like, it's still, like, just because it's on a blockchain doesn't mean you can't see what's happening. You literally can. Yeah.
In a world where you own your own data, I would sell all of mine. And then just
not that you're biased.
And then buy products for less. I'd be like, here's who I am. This is where I currently reside. This is what I'm currently interested in. This is what I'm currently doing. Whoever gives me offers me good products at the cheapest price is who I'm going to buy for. And I'm making it easy to make that decision. That I would own the data, but then release it, because how I don't know. It's not a big secret that I need to whatever that I want to buy clothes today. That's not something
I tend to agree with you.
Yeah,
because I believe people want their lives to be easier and enjoy the trade-off. The only point I would make is that there just needs to be informed consent. Like, it needs to be clear about what you're disclosing. And I think I think most people will say yes, because they want the trade-off of the things you just said. They want access to their product. They want to know. They want Spotify to know and understand their favorite songs so they can listen to it. I've heard people say they love Spotify, can read their mind. And they think of it, some people, as a little creepy. But if we're honest, people like not having to think about those things. They like that. I mean, it's the vast majority. There are some that don't, but they tend to be the outliers in the mass.
Well, that's a really good point. My single biggest complaint about Spotify is, how come I don't know when there's concerts for the artists? I'm listening. And I'm listening to them, but somehow, how come I'm not getting alerted that artist is touring?
Well, I'm going to help you with that. That's exactly what Disrupt Art's about. We'll have an offline conversation about that. That's the whole point of this. Like, I think they have a model that I think works for mass consumption. But then for the super fans and others that really want to know about a more intimate experience, then there's an audience for that. But I don't think Web3 is replacing all of Web2. I think people like the distribution model of getting to be able to listen to their favorite song and understand it. But I also think people want to know what you just said. Oh, here's one of my favorite artists. Can I do something to learn about alerts coming in, and tying those two together? I think it's very, very powerful. Okay, a couple of quick rounds. I want to talk to you briefly after this. All right. The future of advertising and media is, just one sentence, completed.
The future, you caught me off guard with that. The future of advertising and media is definitely more immersive, definitely more, in the near term, less one-to-one, but in the long term, I think it's definitely more one-to-one for the reasons we've been talking about. So It's going to be very, very personalized.
All right. One slogan that describes your business or who you are personally, what would that slogan be?
The hardest working software in advertising.
All right.
So that's our tagline right now. But they also just empowering the marketer to finally fully have access to television.
And what's your personal slogan?
Wow. Ambition, trust, and ambition. That's the culture I've created in my company. It's just all about trusting, everyone that's a part of the team, but still combining that with a lot of ambition. And that's my personal kind of credo, I guess you could say.
Now, Mark Douglas, CEO of Mountain, it's a pleasure having you on Disruption Now. Definitely don't make yourself a stranger.
Thanks.